The current Pokemon boom feels way different than anything we've ever seen, and just something doesn't feel the same. I mean, I'll walk you through some of the price hikes of certain Pokemon cards in just a second, though I think speaking about how different the era we are in right now is really important. I mean, usually when Pokemon cards spike so much in price, it's just kind of expected, and then there's a few cards that genuinely make you do a double take, though this recent price hike feels way off, and there's just a lot of mixed feelings about the current hype. I mean, I've been collecting for a while, and I've also invested in Pokemon cards, and I'm very passionate about collecting in general, though with the amount of new people hearing about Pokemon's, investment potential, I feel we may be approaching a strange scenario. I just have this feeling that there's a lot of money now coming into the hobby, but a lot of new money. And what I mean about new money in this circumstance is just people who've never really collected Pokemon cards, but they're trying to diversify what they're purchasing, and they're just buying whatever they feel like because, I've read that Pokemon cards are a good investment, or I've read that Pokemon cards climb in price. And I mean, at this stage, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if we have people who have zero idea about Pokemon entering. I actually think we have people who are buying Pokemon cards and the only Pokemon they know is Pikachu and Charizard, and I just feel like we've gotten to that point. And whether or not this is a good or bad thing, I'm gonna let you decide. Though one problem with this new money that's coming in is that it's very flaky. And just as quickly as they've come in, that is as quick as they can leave as well. I mean, in 2021, with that whole vintage boom, we saw the insanity of how high prices got. And then when a lot of people left, there was a huge crash. But the thing is right now, we're getting so many new people enter, people who have little connection to the cards. And I just feel there will be a time where a lot of people leave as well because, it isn't really fulfilling them, or it's not that as exciting as they thought it would be. Though, it's pretty interesting seeing some of the prices that we're working with because, some of them are getting out of hand. Check this out. All right, the big one, the crazy one, the wild one, Greninja Special Illustration Rare. 3 months ago, selling for $267. Right now, selling for $348. Now, I don't know if Greninja needed that big of an entry point, but it is a pretty cool card, right? I mean, when we're dealing with Greninja, the artwork is, wild, dude. It's just it's just everywhere, it's in your face, right? When we look at the Paldean Fates Mew and how that's performing and, the prices that's gotten, this one is slightly lagging behind the Mew, but of course, is Greninja as popular as Mew? Probably not. I mean, Greninja probably is very popular for, the kids and the people that grew up in the 3DS era because Greninja was almost like their Charizard, right? It was a very new, fresh starter. Even for Smash Bros, Greninja is a playable character. It's a very coolly designed Pokemon. Right now, selling for $348. If I pull this into the graph, you can see the previous high point this had was $410. So a massive price drop happened from $410 all the way to $266. And right now, when I pull that into the month graph, you can definitely see that Greninja is definitely steadily climbing up. Whether or not this is going to surpass its previous high point, who knows? The market is really behaving in a weird way. But one positive is that there's so many new chase cards that have entered. So because of that, a lot of collectors are deciding where they want to put their money. But nonetheless, it is an amazing artwork. Now, moving on to the Umbreon VMAX. As you can see on that graph there's a bit of Umbreon hype happening right now. And we've got that Charizard hype also coming in the hobby right now. Umbreon is really bullish at the moment. This is the Umbreon VMAX alternate art from Evolving Skies, or as we all know it, Moonbreon from, the Sword and Shield era, which of course became one of the most iconic Pokemon cards pretty much for modern collecting. We can see in August, this card was selling for $1,345 US. Currently, the Moonbreon is selling for $2,124. A big new hype boom has happened for Moonbreon, and new prices are really entering. This card is just, there's a massive population report. For this one, the pop report is quite high. I didn't expect Moonbreon to get to such high levels, especially because of the high pop reports. We do know that there's a good chance for this to come back as a PSA 10 as well. So because of that, maybe people are more comfortable with buying the raw card, but we can see the hobby is going through some big price shifts. Now, while we're on the topic of Pokemon cards and prices, if you are looking to buy Pokemon cards at community-driven prices, that's where today's video sponsor Misprint comes in. Misprint is a US-based website to purchase Pokemon cards, though it's not just a marketplace, it's a hub built around the community itself. Every price you see comes directly from individual listings, which means you're always dealing with live and up-to-date market numbers. And what's really exciting is that Misprint recently rolled out singles, which has opened up an enormous library of cards to pick from, though the real magic from Misprint is how easy they've made selling Pokemon cards. Misprint has a buy buy now and sell now system where buyers can place offers in advance for certain products. Now, as a seller, if you choose to, you can actually have the option to sell straight away if you're happy with one of the preset offers on the platform. Now, on top of that, the Misprint app is a very powerful tool. Misprint's app lets you scan a bunch of PSA slabs with your phone's camera, and it will automatically show you the current market prices for them. Now, what's so awesome, if you do want to try Misprint out, feel free to use my referral code to get $5 off your first purchase. A big thanks to Misprint for sponsoring today's video and helping support the channel. Now let's get back into these prices. Now, moving on to the Umbreon VMAX from Brilliant Stars. You can also see big kind of spike in price here. We can see this card was selling for around $55 in August, right now selling for $78. You know, with the whole Moonbreon hype, everyone expected like, oh, another Umbreon VMAX, this one's going to be really popular, but of course it didn't perform as a lot of people expected. And, you know, people could be playing catch up, but, you know, also you got to think the volume and the amount of different Pokemon artworks we have at the moment is a lot. So, you know, people are just being picky on what they choose. Now, another very unique Umbreon card is this Umbreon EB Games exclusive promo. You know, back when Obsidian Flames came out, this was a special card that you could get from, you know, either GameStop or EB Games. You know, EB Games is Australia and New Zealand's GameStop equivalent. But the really interesting thing about this card in particular was that Australia and New Zealand still got this card, but of course, instead of the GameStop logo, they had EB Games. And, you know, this one's become a very desired collectible, seeing how rare it is to get. You know, in the last year alone, this card's really been climbing in price. You know, in December, selling for 67 US, right now selling for around $115. So definitely some big price growth. You know, these cards are always going to be in demand, especially with how hard they are to get. But, you know, of course, with these promo cards, when they just are stamped promos, you know, because there isn't a unique artwork, it does slow down the growth a little bit because, you know, people really love their unique artwork promos. But of course, still an interesting price point for this Australian and New Zealand exclusive. Now, moving on to the Kingdra, as you can see in the last 3 months, selling for 25 US, right now selling for, you know, 65 USD, which is big price growth. And of course, you know, this card is definitely, you know, in some ways difficult to get because you could only get it in a Shrouded Fable collection box. And of course, they're getting harder to find. Now, Shrouded Fable as a set, you know, as a lot of people know in the hobby, it was probably, you know, wasn't received that well. People weren't, you know, in love with Shrouded Fable. But of course, you know, it's funny that one of the promo cards from Shrouded Fable became so desired. And we could definitely see some big price growth for this one in particular. Now, Pokemon Center stamped cards have also been climbing, and we are still going through this promo card hype. I'm not sure why the promo card hype's happened. I feel like there's some sort of weird thing where people really like how they're acquired, and because they, you know, they're very limited in how you get promo cards, I feel like a lot of people are now really enjoying them as well. But you can see the Magneton Surging Sparks Pokemon Center stamped version is going pretty wild. Selling for 36 USD in July, right now selling for, you know, $90, which is, you know, big price growth in 3 months. So you can definitely see that Pokemon cards are climbing, dude. And it's not like, oh, they're not just going up a little bit, you know, $5, $10. You know, they're really having some big price increases. I mean, that's, you know, not there yet, but, you know, close to 3 times the price it had 3 months ago. So, you know, it is a Pokemon Center exclusive. They are very hard to get graded, but of course the raw copies are selling for decent amounts at the moment. Now, the Charmander Pokemon Center exclusive as well. You know, $95 in July, and right now, look at that, $242. The promo card hype, maybe it's a little bit overdone at this point. You know, seeing this sell for $240, you know, it's pretty high at the moment, so we're gonna just have to see how it plays out. Of course, it's very exclusive, but at the same time, you know, when you're dealing with such high prices, you know, it is a little bit more risky than, of course, buying a $30 card. And of course, moving on to the Pikachu from PHILL Evolved, the Pokemon Center exclusive, selling for 67 US in July, right now selling for $120, close to doubling in price. If I pull this into the year graph, you can see that the low point last year was $32. So, you know, if you did buy it back then, you know, maybe it was a good decision, but you have to be a little bit cautious when purchasing cards at that high price, because you can see it did sell for around $116 in January this year when we had like a little bit of a hype boom happening as well. And then of course, you know, it dropped all the way down to 67 US. So it's in my, like, I'm just looking at that. It's just so volatile, dude. So it's just so difficult to make any predictions on how these cards are going to go. But, you know, as you know, in Pokemon collecting, usually, you know, singles are much more volatile, whereas sealed product historically doesn't really have, you know, that huge, massive price increase and then a massive price drop. Of course, it can still happen, but, you know, that's the difference between singles and sealed. Now, one that's really interesting is the Squirtle from Stellar Crown. You can see it was selling for around $50, you know, all 3 months ago. Right now, it's selling for 76 US. If I pull this into the year graph, you can see it's about to exceed its previous high point from $80. Now, like I mentioned, we had a previous Pokemon hype boom that, it doesn't even feel like we've left that, but we're in another one right now. Right now with this new hype wave, I'm not really sure why it's happening, and I just feel like there's a lot of people just hyping each other up. I'm a little bit confused on what's caused the new hype. The vintage hype in 2020 and 2021, you had a lot of influencers kind of speaking about the vintage craze. Again, you could piece the puzzles together. Same thing in that January, February period when, of course, Pokemon TCG Pocket came out and everyone just started getting excited for the TCG again. This new hype period, I'm not sure what's causing it. So that's the difference here. And it's like, now because we're in territory where no one really knows why it's hype, is it just because everyone's just like jumped in and saying, wow, they're so incredible, these cards? Is it because Legends EA is about to release? What is causing this hype? That's the question that we have to focus on at this stage. And of course, the Squirtle from Pokemon 151 selling for $36 in June, and right now selling for $46, which is, definitely increasing in price. Very cool illustration rare. And one awesome illustration rare is the Groudon from Paradox Rift, selling for $67 US in August, right now selling for $88, which is, it's a very cool illustration rare. Of course, like a lot of people wanted this card to be a special illustration rare, but interesting things are happening. Paradox Rift does feel like a long time ago now, because we are now entering, that was early Scarlet and Violet era days, and of course now we're entering the whole new Mega Evolution phase, which is going to be very interesting for the hobby, and it's going to be interesting to see how the hobby plays out from here. I do know it does feel like, even though it isn't from the Scarlet and Violet era, it definitely feels like a continuation, because, special illustration rares are still going to be a rarity in the new Mega Evolution era, but it's going to be very cool to see what happens from here on out. But I suppose when thinking of these prices, there's a lot of common mistakes that you need to know about when it comes to collecting Pokemon cards, and that's why within this video on screen, I speak about the 4 most common Pokemon investing mistakes and how to avoid them. This video is very useful if you are new to the hobby. Definitely feel free to click the video that's appearing on screen, learn more about that topic there. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.